Okay, today is 5th of August, and we are on the Khandha Samyutta, chapter 22 of the Samyutta Nikaya. Now we come to Sutta 22.59. This is a very important sutta. It's called the Anatta Lakkhana Sutta. This was the sutta that the Buddha spoke to his earliest 5 disciples. And after hearing this sutta, all 5 of them attained arahanthood. Let's see whether any one of us here attained arahanthood. That's what I heard. On one occasion, the Blessed One was dwelling at Varanasi, in the deer park at Isipatana. There the Blessed One addressed the monks of the group of 5 thus, "Monks." "Venerable Sir," those monks replied. The Blessed One said, "Monks, body is not self. For if monks, body were self, this body would not lead to affliction, and it would be possible to have it of body. Let my body be thus, let my body not be thus." But because body is not self, body leads to affliction, and it is not possible to have it of body. Let my body be thus, let my body not be thus. Similarly, feeling is not self, perception, volition, consciousness are not self. For if monks, these aggregates were the self, then these aggregates would not lead to affliction, and it would be possible to have it of the aggregates. Let my aggregates be thus, let my aggregates not be thus. But because the aggregates are not self, the aggregates lead to affliction, and it is not possible to have it of the 5 aggregates. Let my aggregate be thus, let my aggregate not be thus. Stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha says that the 5 aggregates, body, feeling, perception, volition and consciousness, which are basically body and mind, the last 4 being components of mind. So the Buddha says that these aggregates are not self. If the aggregates were ourself, then we would have control over it, and they would not become sick. But because they are not the self, so they constantly become sick, and we have no control over them. What do you think, monks? Is body permanent or impermanent? Impermanent, Venerable Sir. Is what is impermanent suffering or happiness? Suffering, Venerable Sir. Is what is impermanent, suffering and subject to change, fit to be regarded thus? This is mine, this I am, this is myself. No, Venerable Sir. Similarly, is feeling permanent or impermanent? Is perception, volition, consciousness permanent or impermanent? Impermanent, Venerable Sir. Is what is impermanent suffering or happiness? Suffering, Venerable Sir. Is what is impermanent suffering and subject to change, fit to be regarded thus? This is mine, this I am, this is myself. No, Venerable Sir. Stop here for a moment. You see here how the Buddha asks these questions. He goes one by one, he goes through form, and then he has a set of questions. Is body permanent or impermanent? And then they say impermanent. What is impermanent? Does it give rise to suffering or happiness? And then they say give rise to suffering. So what is impermanent and gives you suffering and always subject to change? Is it fit to regard it as I and mine? And they say no, Venerable Sir. And he repeats the same questions for each of the other aggregates. That means all the 5 aggregates. He goes through one by one to drive home the point that these aggregates are a source of suffering. So since they are a source of suffering and we have no control over them, it is not fit to assume they are I and mine, because when you cling on to them as I and mine, they give rise to suffering. So You see a lot of the Buddha's discourses are like that. He repeats the point to make it clearer. Therefore, monks, any kind of body whatsoever, whether past, future or present, internal or external, gross or subtle, inferior or superior, far or near, all bodies should be seen as they really are with correct wisdom thus. This is not mine, this I am not, this is not myself. Similarly, any kind of feeling whatsoever, any kind of perception, volition, consciousness whatsoever, whether past, future or present, internal or external, gross or subtle, inferior or superior, far or near, all aggregates should be seen as they really are with wisdom thus. This is not mine, this I am not, this is not myself. Seeing thus, monks, the learned noble disciple experiences revulsion towards body, revulsion towards feeling, revulsion towards perception, revulsion towards volition, revulsion towards consciousness. Experiencing revulsion, he becomes dispassionate. Through dispassion, his mind is liberated. When it is liberated, there comes the knowledge it is liberated. He understands, destroyed is birth, the holy life has been lived, what had to be done has been done. There is no more for this state of being. This is what the Blessed One said. Elated, those monks delighted in the Blessed One's statement. And while this discourse was being spoken, the minds of the monks of the group of 5 were liberated from the asavas by non-clinging. That's the end of the sutta. So you see, since the Buddha makes them see very clearly, and they can see very clearly when they listen to the Buddha's words, because they have attained the jhanas, and they see things as they really are, as the Buddha says. The condition of seeing things as they really are is a focused mind. So the Buddha drives home the point that these aggregates are a source of suffering, and we have no control over them, and so it is not fit to cling on to them as this is I and mine. Then the Buddha is urging them to let go, and so they see the point and they let go inside, they let go and they become liberated. 22.60. On one occasion, the Blessed One was dwelling at Vesali in the great wood in the hall with the peaked roof. Then Mahali the Lichavi approached the Blessed One and etc. and said to him, Venerable Sir, Purana Kassapa speaks thus, there is no cause or condition for the defilement of beings. Beings are defiled without cause or condition. There is no cause or condition for the purification of beings. Beings are purified without cause or condition. What does the Blessed One say about this? Stop here for a moment. This Purana Kassapa mentioned here is one of 6 leaders of external sects, other religious groups, and they have different teachings. Some of them, like Makaliko Salaputta, say there's no such thing as karma. You can kill a lot of people and there's no sin and all that. So this one says there's no cause or condition for things to happen. It just happen by themselves, just happen by chance or something like that. So this man is asking the Buddha, what is the Buddha's opinion? And the Buddha said, there is, Mahali, a cause and condition for the defilement of beings. Beings are defiled with cause and condition. There is a cause and condition for the purification of beings. Beings are purified with cause and condition. But Venerable Sir, what is the cause and condition for the defilement of beings? How is it that beings are defiled with cause and condition? And the Buddha said, if Mahali, this form were exclusively suffering, immersed in suffering, steeped in suffering, and it were not also steeped in pleasure, beings would not become enamored with it. But because form is pleasurable, immersed in pleasure, steeped in pleasure, and is not steeped only in suffering, beings become enamored with it. By being enamored with it, they are captivated by it, and by being captivated by it, they are defiled. This mahali is a cause and condition for the defilement of beings. It is thus that beings are defiled with cause and condition. If mahali, this feeling, were exclusively suffering, immersed in suffering, steeped in suffering, and if similarly, if perception, volition, consciousness were exclusively suffering, beings would not become enamored with it. But because all the aggregates are pleasing, are pleasurable, beings become enamored with them. By being enamored with them, they are captivated by them, and by being captivated by them, they are defiled. This mahali is a cause and condition for the defilement of beings. It is thus that beings are defiled with cause and condition. So here the Buddha says, beings are said to be defiled because they are captivated by body, feeling, perception, volition, and consciousness. And being captivated, they crave for these five aggregates, so they are said to be defiled. But what, Venerable Sir, what is the cause and condition for the purification of beings? How is it that beings are purified with cause and condition? And the Buddha said, if mahali, this body were exclusively pleasurable, immersed in pleasure, steeped in pleasure, and it were not also steeped in suffering, beings would not experience revulsion towards it. But because body is suffering, immersed in suffering, steeped in suffering, and is not steeped only in pleasure, beings experience revulsion towards it. Experiencing revulsion, they become dispassionate. Through dispassion, they are purified. This mahali is a cause and condition for the purification of beings. It is thus that beings are purified with cause and condition. Similarly, if mahali, this feeling, were exclusively pleasurable, this perception, volition, and consciousness were exclusively pleasurable, beings would not experience revulsion towards them. But because the aggregates are suffering also, beings experience revulsion towards them. Experiencing revulsion, they become dispassionate, and through dispassion they are purified. This too, mahali, is a cause and condition for the purification of beings. It is thus that beings are purified with cause and condition. It's the end of the sutta. So here the Buddha says, the five aggregates, they are a source of suffering. At the same time, they are also a source of pleasure. So those beings who see them more pleasurable than suffering, they would crave for these five aggregates, the body and the mind, and so they become defiled. But people who are more mature, they feel that the aggregates are more suffering than pleasurable, and so because of that, they feel revulsion for the five aggregates, and feeling revulsion, they become dispassionate. They no more crave for them. So that is the purification of beings. So it depends on how mature, spiritually mature the being is. If the being is spiritually immature, then they want to crave for all the worldly pleasures, sensual pleasures. But beings who are mature, spiritually mature, and they see that it is not worth it, the suffering that we derive from clinging to these worldly things is so much, it's not worthwhile, the pleasure is not worthwhile, then we let go. Come to the next sutta, 22.78. At Savatthi, page 913. Monks, in the evening, the lion, the king of beasts, comes out from his lair. Having come out, he stretches himself